Maybe it's just me, but I feel like there's been a recent uptick in criticism towards the new open world formula of the most recent Zelda games. That is nothing new. While critics and many fans have of course loved Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, a pretty vocal part of the fanbase has expressed discontent at missing the linearity, story and dungeons of past titles. Among the discourse, I saw some shots being sent at the Koroks and how they are implemented within the open world. There's too many of them, the reward isn't worth it, they're repetitive, and that's just a few examples of the criticism I've seen. It made me realize some people out there may have been approaching Koroks in these games in a way that I don't think the developers intended, which caused this anger with their implementation. Generally speaking, I think you can divide these people into two categories, based on their playing styles. First are the folks prone to feelings of FOMO, fear of missing out. This tends to be a problem particularly for open world games, not just Zelda specifically, it's the whole genre really. The world is so large, there are so many things to find and experience that players who have the tendency to want to see everything get overwhelmed, or arguably even worse, start pushing themselves to find everything when they would probably enjoy the game more just playing normally. They become a victim of the freedom these games give you. Do you tend to want to fully scope out a new area before moving on to the next? Then you may fall into this category. And in that case, Koroks can indeed be a hindrance. After all, it means that as soon as you hit a new region, you cannot continue until you hear the sweet, sweet relief. Preferably multiple times to know you've truly found them all. And what is the reward for your dedicated search work? Feces. Sure, the game calls it seeds, but even the developers acknowledge this is just dung. But at least it's done with a purpose, seeing as Hestu will upgrade your inventory in exchange for enough of them. Alright, so that's category 1. What about category 2? Well, that's a similar group, but they're not quite the same. I'm talking about completionists, people with relentless dedication to 100% completing a game. Completionists usually don't do what they do out of FOMO. Most games don't really push you towards 100% completion, and definitely not in the way these people often do it. The completionist has no problem setting aside a Korok puzzle they come across for later, and meanwhile, someone with a FOMO based playstyle would probably never collect all Korok seeds. That's completionist behavior. FOMO folk will usually not go back to an area to find that one Korok they inevitably ended up missing earlier. After all, they are under the impression they have completed it. But just like them, completionists also have their fair reasons for hating the Korok population. Tears of the Kingdom has over 1,000 seeds to collect, just a wild amount, and the grand award for getting them all is more feces, Hestu's this time around, which they had also already been handed in Breath of the Wild. If you're a completionist hoping for a cool sword or outfit or maybe a limited inventory or really just anything to reward you with your time investment, that one has to sting. That's completely understandable. But there is one crucial miscommunication here that makes for a rift between these two groups of players and the developers. They never designed the Koroks with you in mind. And depending on your stance on this topic, that may sound obvious or like an oversight, but neither is the truth. These players and the developers see Koroks as different things with a different purpose. For these groups of players, they're collectibles. They're a complete Pokédex in Pokémon, all the stars in Mario, all the trophies or spirits in Super Smash Bros. Gotta catch them all, basically. But the developers never once saw the Koroks like this. Have you ever noticed that the game doesn't really track how many Koroks you found? Sure, you get a check mark on the map, but there's no this many out of 1,000 Koroks check, like there is with many other things in the game. Recipes, for example, or the best example really, everything the Hyrule Compendium tracks. Creatures, enemies, weapons, items, all of those the devs intended for players to collect. Those are your gotta catch 'em alls. The reward may not be as spectacular as players may hope, but it's definitely better than literal poop. Anyway, bottom line, the development team never meant for you to collect every single Korok seed. In fact, in order to obtain every inventory upgrade, you only need to find less than half of them. So that begs the question, why are there so many? Well, because the developers don't know where you are gonna go. So they've effectively hidden an equal amount of Koroks all over Hyrule, spread from north to south. That means that no matter if your first steps take you to Rito Village or Gerudo Desert, you will always find some Koroks on your way, even if you just follow the road and aren't even trying to find secrets. After all, Inventory upgrades are an essential part of the gameplay experience. And while the devs definitely intended for Koroks to be a perfect little secret to reward exploration, they also realized you need high numbers of them. So players of every age, playstyle, whatever would at least come across a few during their journey. And don't forget the factor that some folks may also not be able to solve every puzzle for whatever reason. So there we find a problem. And it has led to people criticizing Koroks for not fitting a role they were never meant to have in the first place. Really, how the game wants you to find Koroks is to go on your merry way and complete the puzzles you happen to come across. Now, of course, this doesn't mean you shouldn't be collecting all seeds if you genuinely enjoy it. But ask yourself that once in a while. Do I genuinely enjoy what I'm doing right now? I've had to ask myself that question about games I played religiously back in the day, and while I admit it can be difficult, if the answer is no, it's not worth it. If the answer is yes though, have at it. Just keep in mind that your playstyle may not be what the majority of players are doing or what the developers are aiming for. And that's only in certain circumstances, like this one really. Because when it comes to open world games in general, they honestly aim for your playstyle pretty often. Oh, and let me just throw some criticism at the Koroks as well, because these little buggers are not without flaw either. At least not in Breath of the Wild, where their puzzles are generally too repetitive in my opinion and not always worth the reward, which is something I don't think the developers intended. Fortunately, Tears of the Kingdom has massively improved on them already, adding many new puzzles, many of which use the new abilities in much better way than Breath of the Wild ever did. It's no coincidence the game has spawned so many memes of Koroks being sent into space or what have you. It's a sign something is going very right there, even if I think Koroks could be improved upon even further. It's hard to speculate about the future of Zelda games and Koroks as a result, but I think even supporters of the little guys like myself feel like future entries may be better off not using them again the exact same way. I wouldn't mind them having a similar design role, so essentially as a reward for exploration, but I do think either their entire puzzle system would need to be revamped or their reward has to be drastically different. Otherwise you would run serious risk of Koroks getting stale even for those who don't psychologically torture themselves for them, and that can be the direction Aonuma wants to take these new series icons. Yeah, it's easy to forget seeing how frankly iconic Koroks as a race have become since their inclusion in Breath of the Wild, but once upon a time they were a pretty niche group of 3 people entirely confined to the Wind Waker. And now, 20 years later, they're immortalized in a Lego set alongside the Great Deku Tree. It's been one hell of a rise in popular culture for the little guys, which, if you want to be technical, you could even date back all the way to Ocarina of Time with their Kokiri ancestors. And something tells me the Zelda movie is not gonna overlook these highly marketable dudes either. Point being, Koroks are not going anywhere. While you can never be certain in this series who makes the cut for the next iteration of Hyrule, I think chances for the Koroks return are very high. And if the open world formula is kept, which is something Aonuma has definitely hinted at, it may in fact be in a similar but evolved form compared to the past 2 installments. And if that's the case, I hope you remember this video. And maybe consider changing your approach the third time around. Who am I kidding? We both know we love it. And if you loved this video, I would greatly appreciate it if you would consider giving it a like and maybe even subscribe to the channel to hear me talk about Zelda more often. Oh, and let me know in the comments if you recognize these playing styles. I have done my research of course and have first-hand experience with both these feelings, but I'm no psychologist, so I'm very curious for your experiences of traveling Hyrule and other open worlds. For now, thanks for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.